see it since the eye does, you know, just from a simple primitive point of view. Why accept a technical limitation if the technician is willing to fix it?
Yeah. So in other words, you'd say, I want to see him, and I want to
see him clearly.
And that was the most difficult thing, wasn't it? And it required a great deal of light. Isn't that what finally happened?
Yes. And in some cases, split screen in those days.
Really?
We used quite a lot of split screen.
And now, for instance, what scene can you tell me?
When I'm typing, when Joe Cotton is typing, they notice, and I come in the background and talk to him and go. That's split screen.
Really?
Yeah.
Never could tell.
And there's a couple of other split screen, minor things. It's quite an enormous amount of trick work, of course, in the picture. It's one long special effects. Took months after the picture to get all the opening things done, you know. All those miniatures and everything. I sent them back 30, 40 times, you know, because you know how phony those things can be.
Oh, yeah, terrible. I mean, the castle, getting
all those kind of things. The newsreel, of course, we did every day. We did a piece of the newsreel every day, depending on what makeup I had on.
Yeah.
And then we'd go and steal it from some place in the back lot, you see, and do a little piece of that, depending on which age I was made up for.
Yeah.
We'd just run out and grab another piece.
And was the film, for instance, in the scene, in the ones where the film was supposed to look very old, was that done by the lab?
Yes, by the lab. And when it opened in Milan, in Italy, the audience stood up and screamed at the projectionist in indignation because they thought they'd got a very primitive American picture with bad quality.
How funny.
Yes, terrible demonstrations. Yes, it worked.
With the Italians, wouldn't
it?
Yeah. Was it always, from the beginning, was it that you were going to play the part? Was it decided?
Yes, oh yes.
I'm fascinated with this working with Toland. This must have extended into the other technicians as well. I mean,
oh yes, it was a marvelous.
I mean, your lack of knowledge, and in a sense, and asking for things that hadn't been asked for.
Yeah, and there was a kind of unwritten agreement on everybody's part that nobody was going to not give it to me. It was such a wonderful atmosphere. We had a couple of spies on the set who were enemies, but everybody else hated the spies, so they were completely quarantined. And you know, the first 2 weeks of the picture was done without them knowing we were shooting the picture. We said we were making tests because I had never directed a picture.
Yeah.
So they were, you know, another test, and that was part of the big legend began. Imagine he's been 14 days on camera tests with extras and actors in costume, you know, and we were shooting the picture because we wanted to get started and be already into it before
anybody,
you know, knew about it.
So that you wouldn't have the pressure on you.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. That was Toland's idea.
Really?
No, it was Ferguson's idea, I think, the art director.
Is that why you gave Toland credit on the same card with yourself at the end of the picture?
I thought he deserved it. Nobody'd ever given a cameraman credit except in a list of about 8 names until then in the American pictures. Now they get, you know, the second powder puff standby fellow gets a separate card, but in those days nobody did, you know, except the director and the producer.
Yeah, I know. And you took it with him.
Yes.
Same card.
Yes.
Which was very generous.
Well, I thought he deserved it.
Now, about the writing of the script, which is another legendary story, because everybody takes credit for it. That is, people assign credit, like, as you said, your old enemy John Houseman assigns credit for the script to Mankiewicz.
It's very funny that he does that, because he deserves some credit himself. And it's very perverse on his part, because he's actually a junior writer on it and made some very important contributions himself.
Really?
Yeah. And for some curious reason, he's never wanted to take that bow. It gives him more pleasure just to show that I didn't write it. And it was such an argument about it. with Mankiewicz's friends when the picture turned out well, and I want to take credit with him that the secretary who kept all the scripts, the ones that I'd done, the ones he did, presented them, and it was decided that by the lawyer that there could be no, if it was taken to arbitration, there would be even question whether he got it, and certainly no question about whether I did, because the scripts were dated. Those that had been written in India or someplace out in the desert where he went with Houseman, and those which I had written, and there was simply a question of record. He did make very great contributions to it, but it isn't true that he was the only writer or even the senior writer on it.
Yeah. Well, how did the story begin?
An idea of mine, which was to tell, which was basically the idea of Rashomon later on, which is to tell the same story several times, see exactly the same scene happening.
From different points of view.
Vestiges of left at Cain of that, but it was the original gimmick out of which Cain grew. Then we searched for a man who should be the fellow, and Hearst and so on. The big contribution of Mankiewicz was the Rosebud gimmick, which was his, not mine. And I'm still not too keen about it, but I think it manages to work effectively, but it's got a slight, only uneasy relationship to dollar book psychoanalysis for me. But it works, so I shouldn't be sour grapish about it. But his great contribution was Bernstein. He wrote almost all of the Bernstein character.
It's interesting because that character is named at least after somebody in your life.
Yes. Well, of course, I invented the character. He didn't, and there's all kinds of. Well, you know that Leland is based on George Stevens' uncle. It was Ashton Stevens, who was a drama critic and Hearst's great friend, and my first great defender in the world. And he told me about Hearst all these years, and he loved Hearst more than anybody, and he'd been a Hearst critic for something like 50 years. He was one of the great American drama critics, and a man very much like Leland. And he was on the set, and he saw the movie and thought Hearst would be thrilled by it. And then
Hearst wasn't.
in his old age, he was forbidden to write about me.
That's sad. He had defended you where?
Well, defended it. He had written great reviews of him when I started in the theater.
In the theater, I see, yeah.
First written about me when I was in Ireland. He was written in America about my successes, and then later about me in the theater. And all my first great notices were from this character. And all my knowledge of Hearst was more from him than from my father, although my father knew Hearst very well. I don't remember much except some long story about putting a chamber pot on a flagpole or something like that, but I don't remember much of my father. But a lot I got from Ashton, who taught him to play the banjo in San Francisco. That's how I got to be a dramatic critic.
Well, you once made a remark that if Hearst wasn't careful, you might make a film about it.
Yes.
After Cain. But implicit in that...
Fair enough, I think, statement. Yeah, because it's the real story of Hearst is quite different from Cain's, and Hearst himself as a man is very different, and would be less sympathetic figure, I think.
Mm-hmm. Cain was very sympathetic, and it isn't really about Hearst.
No, it's about also, there's great stuff from McCormick, and the Chicago Opera and all that. I drew a lot of that from the straight Chicago Opera story.
Was it in your contract that about the final cut of the first picture?
That's right.
It was.
But the important thing was that nobody could see any rushes that come on the set, and that's never happened before. Until Catch-22, nobody ever had that.
Oh, really? How did you know to ask for that?
If you sit and try to think of reasons to get out of going to Hollywood, you finally invent that, you know.
Oh, I see. Invented.
Yeah, sure.
It wasn't that somebody warned you.
No.
Just didn't want to come. Did you actually, you said you went to Woody, or you talked to Woody Van Dyke, and he gave you the advice to stay in close and keep
it moving, yes, keep it moving, yeah.
Did you, did a lot of directors give you...
No, he was the only advice I ever got was that. And I think it's as good as you can get.
It's damn good. I love it. Did you write Heart of Dark in Cologne?
Yeah. No co-author.
And we talked about that.
Yeah.
The British actor Robert Coote played Roderigo in Orson's Othello.
Did you actually start rehearsing Heart of Darkness?
No, I made a test of Heart of Darkness with Robert Coote, who later played, what's his name, in My Fair Lady and all that. And in a big scene, Robert Coote and 2 or 3 other people have shot for one day a scene from it.
Mm-hmm. And how did it look?
Well, I guess it looked all right. I don't know.
What was the point of the test? What were you testing, in fact?
Well, to see what would happen with me in a movie studio with a camera, really, if you want to know. And it seemed to work all right, and Coote was terribly good in the scene, and that was it.
That was it, yeah. And it was at that point around there that you said that line that was quoted, which I always liked, about the movie set was the electric train set.
Not really. No, that was after the picture over. That was when Albert Johnson wrote a series of 6 articles about me in Saturday Evening Post.
No.
And I said it to him, and they're great pieces, and you ought to look at them. The best things have ever been written about.
Really?
And very witty and clever and marvelous. And he worked on it and stayed with me, and he was in the best New Yorker tradition, and very friendly and funny and everything.
And they were in the Post.
Yeah.
Saturday Evening Post.
Yeah. In the days when that was a great paper.
Yeah.
What Orson actually said about a movie set was he called it the greatest electric train set any little boys ever had to play with.